So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our this month's day-long retreat organized by Ajahn Brahm Society, Sri Lanka. So, I welcome you all on behalf of Ajahn Brahm Society. So, it's good to see you all once again gathered together to practice today. So now is the time to listen to Dhamma. So, I'll start my Dhamma talk with bare respects to Lord Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Monks. These two people are hard to find in the world. Which two? The one who is first to do a kindness, and the one who is grateful for a kindness done and feels obliged to repay it. These two people are hard to find in the world. So, as you can imagine, I chose this sutta as a topic for this today's talk. So there are these two people hard to find in the world. One who is giving kindness, and one who is grateful for that kindness. So I wanted to talk about gratitude today. So I was once again thinking what could be a topic for this month's retreat, and there's this story I would like to tell you as an introduction, so I can sort of delve into the talk. So last month I was here during the retreat, and meanwhile I was visiting my relatives. Actually, this was one of my uncles' father's side. So I was visiting them. They are not that far from here, and I was visiting an aunt as well. So she was, she was pleased to see me. After a while, I rarely kind of see them. And then she was getting into sort of stories and stuff. There were a couple of dogs visiting her at that time. I could see that they were kind of coming by, wagging their tails. And she was telling one of these dogs, there was a story about those dogs. So she was feeding them. They are not kind of they are not living there, somewhere else. But they would occasionally visit her, and she would feed them. One of them was so fond of her, would follow her occasionally, I guess. And this time she was out and about to run some errands, I guess. Walking towards the town. And she said she was absent-mindedly crossing the road, and this dog was behind, and she wasn't paying attention to the traffic for some reason, and she found this dog was sort of biting into her dress and trying to pull her back towards the side of the road. And she kind of immediately, she was brought back to her senses, and luckily there weren't any kind of like traffic kind of coming dangerously, but a biker actually saw this at a distance, and she was now by the road, and this biker actually slowed down and told her that he also observed how she was rescued by this dog. So and then kind of he moved on. So she was pleased, and she was taken aback by this gesture by the dog. So it was also there, not that kind of a looking friendly, but calm and kind of a quiet. But it was there also at that time I was visiting, and a couple of cousins also with me. I was visiting uncles, and they kind of we together sort of walked to this aunt's house nearby, and we were on our way back to uncle's. This one of my cousins was telling that, look, but the aunt was moved, and she was telling this story, and she was inspired and all, but he wasn't that kind of convinced, and this cousin was telling, look, I mean, these dogs you feed, and they're being nice to us because for their end, for their gain, he said. And well, I disagreed, but I didn't want to sort of get into an argument over this, this behavior. But that led me to think later on also this good old gratitude. We've heard thousands of times, but yet something we forget all the time. So why not kind of talk about gratitude, I thought, because the last time was pretty heavy-duty talk, sort of a lot of kind of a theoretical aspects of Buddhism. So I thought maybe, this time, let's bring ourselves back to the kind of a ground stuff. There's a lot of kind of a foundation work to be laid, as Buddhists. So gratitude as a change. So yes, gratitude. It is. We know actually, how important it is, and all this. The importance of it. But when we are living our day-to-day lives, compared to monks, even monks sometimes find it difficult. I've noticed, but I can imagine as lay people how unpopular you can be if you sort of preaching gratitude towards how you deal with your day-to-day life sometimes, because we are cynical. We have become cynical sometimes, at least, because we think that there is this there are different ways of different takes of a certain situation, but objectively, not subjectively, objectively we think, because now we are greatly conditioned by the Western thinking. We try to sort of get to the truth, the objective truth, not the subjectivity, which is like, you come across a little weak if you sort of try to say something subjective, how you feel. But, you have to sort of cut across all that rubbish, so to speak, and, and it had to be objective. So objectively, people are not that nice. They are not up to good, and you have to sort of be on alert, what's happening outside, and you are encouraged to fault find, try to think, improve things, and these are the roles we play in day-to-day situation, and we are greatly conditioned by this kind of thinking. And this is not samma sankappa. This is not right sort of aspiration, or right thinking, intention. So, but yet we are conditioned like this. But at what cost, you think? Yes, you think that somehow I'll be able to protect myself, navigate myself, all these bads around me, so you try to sort of be critical. But on the other hand, the more and more you become this critical person, more and more you feel this bitterness, you feel this, you can't trust anyone, this anxiety, this if you feel in that way, it'll be pretty depressing sometimes for certain people. There are people actually, despite all that, we feel that this is not the way we should think all the time. So we just kind of try to sort of be less negative towards this, because what's the reason? It's painful thinking that way. So we instead of thinking like that, we change the perception. We try to think in a different way. So what the Lord Buddha's advice? The noble truths, like it or not, the 8 worldly dhammas are there. There is a gain, there is a loss. When the loss is there, usually our response is to sort of point fingers at people. Who's responsible? Who should go to the jail? And things like that. Don't get me wrong, there's a system of justice and all these things. But before we get to that, getting upset and angry, you are becoming a bitter person doesn't help at all. Whatever you want to see, the change you want to see in the society, that's not it. We need to sort of have peace at first, and then maybe you are not clouded, your judgment is not clouded by this bitterness, but you are more clear, you have gained clarity, because you think in a different way. But yes, at the end of the day, there must be a system to live together as a society. So we have, we as Buddhists, we also recognize that as well. But at the beginning, we need to do something about our own suffering, and then we go about and doing something for the society. So how do we sort of tackle this, this inner suffering? Yeah, we lessen our expectation. Because whether you like it or not, these things happen. People doing unkind things, people being unfair, people doing stupid things. That's the reality of it. So we try to lessen our expectation, because otherwise it'll be more suffering for ourselves. What Ajahn Brahm would say, he would say, you're asking the world, it can never give you. You're asking the world something it can never give you. That is his definition of suffering. So we should ask ourselves, are we asking the world something it can't provide? We should be practical. Otherwise, we are kind of expecting these things according to our sort of our laws, our sort of rules and regulations. We have a book of rules and regulations, so to speak. We try to sort of abide by these as a virtuous person, and we expect others to be the same. But you can't have it. You can't, it is something unreasonable. That is what you see. The data suggests, if you look around the world, not just this country, if you look around the world, the same thing you see. Time to time, things happen. Now you see, even the politically these days, how things getting, more and more incendiary. There were times, politically, or like the tides were different. Now the tides have changed once again. And it will change once again after all these things. So things change. That's the eight-worldly Dhamma. That's the samsara. It kind of goes on and on and on, ups and downs, ups and downs. So we also experienced difficult times lately as a country. We had COVID, something we were anxious about at the beginning, particularly, life and death situation at the beginning. And then the economic crash happened. And these things by nature are difficult. I can't imagine actually how, as lay people, how much you had to put through. I can't imagine, to tell the truth. But we have an idea actually, we heard stories and all these things. So by nature, these events, these things, these disasters and all these things, they're painful, they're difficult. But having a wrong mindset, actually it kind of adds up, it's more difficulty on top of that. So when the time is difficult, we have to be careful not to add more to that difficulty. So being this kind of a critical, fault-finding, cynical doesn't help at all. But our natural response is that somehow we'll get to the bottom of this by pursuing such emotions. But it doesn't help that much. So, surely someone was responsible. Surely there was stupidity, ignorance, greed, and all these things. But you see, this is the part of the world. It's not the first time happened in this country. It's not something happened. It's not the first time this kind of a thing happened in the world. You see these things, and there are like examples for these things. So you think in these terms, so you can gain a little bit of a perspective. Look, the history repeats itself. Why should I get it too personal about all these things? Because it's the nature of the world. Lord Buddha had told that. And you can see, if you pay attention to the history, you can see that it has happened before. And you see the same pattern comes again and again. So that's yonaso manasikara. You think in terms of what's happening, what's the reality of it, what's more real. And if you think in the way the things as they are, it's liberating. It doesn't make your heart more heavy. That is yonaso manasikara. So as I said, once we gain that clarity, once we feel light about what happened, and then maybe we can do something about it. How can we possibly avoid such situations? But the things will happen. Now, look at the discipline, the monk's discipline, the Vinaya. Now, part of the discipline is, of course, to tame your mind, purify your mind. You get to kind of deep states of mind, the samadhi and the maggaphala and all. Definitely, that's the first thing. What's the second thing? The Vinaya actually gives a standard, a system. It's kind of a law for monastics. So it's not just a personal, for the personal liberation, but it's for the institution as well. So being kind of thinking in these terms, finding the peace doesn't mean that we forget about the institution. Even Lord Buddha set down rules. So in order to sort of gain clarity, what happened, let's say some kind of a problem in the Sangha, if we were to be very critical and pointing fingers and all, we can never settle something. First of all, we need to have that compassion. Things happen. People sometimes do sort of bad things or crazy things or being absent-minded or anything. Things happen. And you sort of approach to these things with a little bit of a compassion, with a little bit of empathy. But the Buddha says you need to address this thing. Eventually you need to. And that's how the Vinaya works. So you address it. You talk to the person, but not in an angry way. And eventually you seek for a settlement. So there is this personal growth and institutional growth, or in the broader sense, the growth of the society as a society. That's also there in the agenda, if you like, when Lord Buddha explained these things. So cultivating these things, these emotions like gratitude, forgiveness, being kind, doesn't mean that somehow you are complacent or you're being vulnerable to something and things like that. No. That's because that's one of the reasons actually, people might kind of quickly resort, oh yeah, I know, it's kind of great, when you give a talk or kind of in a books or something, but in the real world, it's a totally different story. It seems like a different story because we usually resort to our conditioning in the past. In the samsara, we've been conditioned like that, to respond to these things like that. If you keep responding like that, you will continue in the samsara like that. Because you're waging wars towards these things. You will be born again to continue the war you waged. That's what we've been doing. We had been doing in the previous lives. We are doing it right now. You will find yourself once again fighting for the just. Somehow, at least not like greater just, maybe just to kind of just leave me alone. Just kind of just leave me alone. I'll kind of have my kind of life. Don't kind of but sometimes you don't get it. You don't get it because that's a part of getting reborn. That's the 8 worldly Dhammas. So why Lord Buddha says this thing again and again? just let's stop kind of arguing with the reality. Dukkha is the First Noble Truth. It's a noble truth, it's a principle, for goodness sake. Why it is a principle? It is a reality. So Lord Buddha was kind of keep telling us this thing again and again and again. He called this thing as a right view, and different ways of his telling this thing, so that we don't argue with him or we don't argue with this reality when things happen. If dukkha happens, don't argue with the dukkha. You're making things worse. That's what Lord Buddha is saying. So that's why a dukkha is a noble truth. It's not just a fancy word. Arya Satya. In the time of the Lord Buddha, that was like a very kind of it's a very good word to emphasize, how important this truth is. Arya Satya, we don't use it anymore, other than in the classical sense. But the Arya Satya in today's world is that's one of the basic principles, the fundamentals. So we don't argue with the gravity. Actually, before climbing a tree, you might kind of fall, and you are not kind of falling this way or that way or upwards. You fall downwards. You know that for a fact, so you are ready. Actually how it, which direction you fall, will fall, and what it means. So we don't argue with the gravity. Why would you argue with the dukkha? Why we argue with the dukkha, including myself? Why? Because of this condition, we think that it shouldn't be here. So all these things we have to sort of deal with the samma sankappa, dealing with the right thinking. The nekkhamma sankappa, you think in terms of letting go. The avyapada sankappa, you are not seeking for kind of a affliction. Try to sort of steer away from that affliction, not kind of in a external sense. Sometimes if you can, fine, but sometimes you don't get that opportunity. The affliction is right here. Maybe it's with you, your own emotions and stuff. But how can we possibly not to sort of afflict, having a conflict with yourself, your thoughts, or your, immediate people you are living with? That's avyapada. Avihingsa also a similar thing. You are not seeking to change, hurting people. You try to sort of leave things as they are. So that is the sankappa. That's the attitude. So you are sort of you are asked to deal with this world. So that's samma sankappa. So thinking about the people out there, up to no good. So thinking like that leads to this reductionism. This maybe you heard this term. You reduce a person to one small thing. He is a bad person, or this person is a mean person or stupid. It's easy to sort of dehumanize a person, because so and so did something bad. He or she is like this. Therefore, what are you going to do about it? But in the reality, people are complex. People are not that simple. In our mind, though, That's very simple, very kind of black and white, very easy to sort of you sort of pass the judgment. Yeah, this is it, up to no good. But in the reality, people have good qualities also. Despite their sort of bad behavior, you see people do good things. But somehow, because of that original stand, that thinking we had, that fault-finding mind somehow kind of totally omits, totally ignore that part of that person's character. And therefore we sort of overlook greatly, and you are again not kind of really in touch with the reality. It's part of it. You think that that's kind of something objectively, you're dealing with, someone, being kind of bad. People are complex. So, thinking, finding faults actually leads to this negativity. That negativity drains your energy. That's the problem. So that doesn't help at all, and it makes the situation worse. So Lord Buddha says that what's the cause of the anger, the annoyance, that irritation? Lord Buddha says there's this patigha nimitta in Pali. This sign of this object of, which inspires, which kind of gives a rise to annoyance, the anger, the patigha. The patigha means the affliction. The patigha nimitta is the cause for this affliction. It can be the weather condition, it can be an animal, it can be a person, anything. Someone's words, it kind of someone rubbing up against you. Patigha nimitta. That's the first cause, gives rise to anger. What's the second one? Patigha nimitta plus the ayoniso manasikara. Ayoniso manasikara. You have heard the term. You know yoniso manasikara. Yoniso manasikara means that you think in terms of the reality, how things origin. Literally, that's what it means. You think how things origin, the yoniso manasikara. You think in a certain way that will lead to lessening your suffering. That's another way of saying, another way of putting this yoniso manasikara. So ayoniso manasikara, on the other hand, you are not that kind of being in touch with the reality. That doesn't help you if you think in that way. We have experience like that. You are angry with someone, you are annoyed, and the more you think, more you go down in that path, the more difficult you feel. And somehow, sometimes we choose that path, we go on and on and on, and we find ourselves in this deep pit sometimes. And finally, maybe you come to your senses and think, yeah, look, this doesn't go anywhere. How can I possibly come out of it? So you know actually what it means. If you choose to go down that path, the more bitter it gets. That's ayoniso manasikara. So instead of ayoniso manasikara, Lord Buddha says, choose yoniso manasikara in the face of a patigha nimitta, when you're experiencing an affliction. Choose yoniso manasikara. Why? That's a wise thing to do. You're being kind to yourself, and in turn you're being kind to the others as well. and you get to keep your peace, your happiness. You're less depressed, one less thing to worry. Your baseline happiness will go up eventually. Things happen, but somehow you're not getting into that kind of thinking, spiraling down to that thinking. No, you choose not to. What this means is that we are not, as Buddhists, denying or being ignorant about the patika nimitta. Patika nimittas are there. We are not saying that they are not there. People do bad things, things happen. The dukkha is there. But we choose which path we take. We are responsible. We are in charge, in fact, how to respond to these things. So that's the liberation. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Actually, Lord Buddha gave this gift. He somehow pointed out, actually, you have a choice. Finally, you have a choice. But somehow, things happen very quickly. The habit is so strong, sometimes we don't see it. But you listen to this Dhamma, you contemplate these things, you are not kind of letting these things go. You try to contemplate, you try to sort of absorb these things into your thinking. And once this thing occurs, you catch it, on the spot. There you go. Okay, I'm not choosing, I'm not choosing that way, I'll choose this way. Because already, there are so many adults here, we've kind of lived our life to know that actually, what it means if you go down that path of anger and irritation. So, we choose what to think. So we choose, we get to keep our peace because of that. So, on this occasion, I have a sutta I can share with you. This was uttered by Venerable Sariputta, one of the great monks of the Sangha of the Lord Buddha. So, this is in the Anguttara Panchaka, the group of the group of fives. This is So the topic of the sutta is getting rid of resentment. There are two suttas. This is the second one. The sutta goes like this. There, Venerable Sariputta addressed the mendicants, the bhikkhus, reverend bhikkhus. Reverend, they replied. Sariputta said this: Reverence, a mendicant, a bhikkhu, should use the 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen toward anyone. What 5? There are these 5 cases where Sariputta explains, and he gives similes for these 5 cases. So he mentions these 5 cases first. In the case of a person whose behavior by way of body, is impure, is doing bodily, wrong things bodily, but whose behavior by way of speech is pure, but he doesn't speak bad, but he occasionally does, he or she does kind of bad things bodily. You should get rid of resentment for that kind of a person. And the second person, in the case of a person whose behavior by the way of speech is impure, this time it's the speech is impure, but whose behavior by the way of body is pure. That's also you need to deal with. The third case, in the case of a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is impure, both the body and speech is impure, but who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time, both bodily and verbally, the bad behavior, but time to time they get an opening. They gain clarity, they come to their senses, so to speak. That's the third case. The fourth case, in the case of a person whose behavior by the way of body and speech is pure. Oh, actually, that's the fifth one. Actually, again, it is behavior by the way of body and speech is impure, and who doesn't get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. That's like a worst case scenario here, yeah? And the fifth one, in the case of a person whose behavior by the way of body and speech is pure, both aspects pure, and who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time, which is a good person. You should get rid of resentment for that kind of person as well. So 5 cases, and then he goes on actually, with 5 similes, what it means, dealing with these 5 cases. The first case, how should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of speech is impure? Way of speech is impure. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, the first thing was again, the behavior by the way of body is impure, but whose behavior by way of speech is pure. You remember the first case. Suppose a bhikkhu wearing a rag robe sees a rag by the side of the road. So there's a practice called rag robe wearer's practice, from the Buddha's time. Instead of receiving a brand new cloth from the laity, while they're on Pindapata and on their Charika, they see a discarded cloth by the road or lying on the earth, and then they kind of take it because no one owns it. It's a used sort of a discolored kind of a cloth. You kind of take it, you wash it, and kind of you cut it in a certain way, and you sort of you make a robe out of that. Not just kind of one piece most of the time. You kind of collect such clothes and sort of make a robe out of it. So this is in such a case that suppose a mendicant wearing a rag robes sees a rag by the side of the road, they'd hold it down with left foot. They hold it down with their left foot, spread it out with the right foot because it's kind of a dirty and filthy sometimes. Tear out what was intact. So you step onto it. You use the other leg just to kind of tear apart the good part of that cloth. Tear out what was intact and take it away with them. In the same way, at that time you should ignore that person's impure behavior by way of body and focus on their pure behavior by way of speech. Nice simile, isn't it? That's how to get rid of resentment for that person. So instead of giving more kind of a abstract instruction, he gives an analogy, a simile. So we can think, somehow we'll remember that, doing the same thing like that monk does. You try to sort of tear away the good part and you kind of take that with you, leaving the bad parts behind. How should you get rid of the resentment? The second case. Yes, okay. How should you get rid of the resentment for a person whose behavior by way of speech is impure, but whose behavior by way of body is pure? Another simile. Suppose there was a lotus pond covered with moss and aquatic plants. Then along comes a person struggling in the oppressive heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. They would plunge into the lotus pond, sweep apart the moss and aquatic plants, and drink from their cupped hands, like this, cupped hands, and be on their way. In the same way, at the time, you should ignore the person's impure behavior by way of speech and focus on their pure behavior by way of body. That's how to get rid of resentment for that person. There are cases like that. You don't like how they talk in general, something puts you off. But somehow actually at their heart, they're meaning well sometimes. Sometimes they try their best. They try to be generous and kind sometimes, but somehow they're very critical about certain things. So when they start, it's kind of a painful. There they goes again, in their rant about something, how bad the world is or something or the other. So that's the second case. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is impure and who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time, gains clarity. Suppose there was a little water in a cow's hoof print. You can imagine, right? Like on like a muddy or let's say like a dried earth, you see cow hoof print, So that, after rain also, there'll be a little bit of water there, a little puddle there, in his hoof print. Then along comes a person struggling in the oppressive heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. They might think, this little bit of water is in a cow's hoof print. If I drink it with my cupped hands or a bowl, I'll stir it and disturb it, making it undrinkable. Why don't I get down on all fours, hands and knees, and drink it up like a cow, then be on my way. So that's what they do. In the same way, at that time, you should ignore the person's impure behavior by way of speech and body and focus on the fact that they get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. So that's the third case. The fourth case, who doesn't get openness and clarity of heart time to time, right? Suppose a person was traveling along a road and they were sick, suffering, gravely ill. You see such a person, traveling along a road, very sick, suffering, gravely ill. And it was a long way to a village, whether ahead or behind. And they didn't have any suitable food or medicine or a competent carer or someone to bring them within a village. Another person traveling along the road might see them and think of them with nothing but sympathy, kindness, and sympathy and kindness. Oh, may this person get suitable food or medicine, or a competent carer, or someone to bring them within the village. Why is that? So that they don't come to ruin right here. In the same way, at that time, you should ignore the person's impure behavior by way of speech and body, and the fact that they don't get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time, and think of them with nothing but compassion, kindness, and sympathy. So that's the fourth case. And what's the fifth case? How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is pure and who gets an openness and clarity of heart time to time? Sometimes we get angry with people actually, who are good also, maybe giving advice or something which you don't like to hear. But it's nothing to do with their behavior, it's our kind of irritation. Even this happened to Lord Buddha sometimes, Lord Buddha would say something to a certain monk, they get angry and, being dismissive towards Lord Buddha. So he might be covering that aspect here. Suppose there was a lotus pond with clear, sweet, cool water, clean with smooth banks, delightful and shaded by many trees. Then along comes a person struggling in the oppressive heat, very thirsty and parched. They would plunge into the lotus pond to bathe and drink. And after emerging, they would sit or lie down right there in the shade of the trees. What a wonderful simile it is. In the same way, at the time you should focus on the person's pure behavior and so forth. So a bhikkhu should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen towards anyone. So you see, instead of this negativity, what the Lord Buddha says, what the Sariputta recommends, is that change your perception. There's this teaching in suttas. It's rather an abbreviated, like an abstract teaching, rather abstract. Time to time, you should have that skill to change your perception. Sometimes from asubha to subha, sometimes from subha to asubha, sometimes both subha and asubha you treat as subha, sometimes both subha and asubha you treat as asubha, and sometimes when you experience subha and asubha, either way, instead of trying to change the perception, you are trying to be equanimous towards that. So there are these 5 strategies altogether, Lord Buddha says in this sutta. So you see, that's what kind of Venerable Sariputta tells us here. So in the case of asubha, we experience some kind of asubha. Now here, it doesn't mean the typical Sinhalese rendition of the asubha, which is like the unpleasantness of the body. It's not just that. It is this negativity in your mind, which is akusala. That's what here it means. So you experience asubha in terms of negativity towards a person, annoyance, you're being angry, that's asubha. You change the asubha towards subha. That's a part of the training. So that's what actually Venerable Sariputta trying to tells us here, changing the perception. So we recognize this different nimittas, but we know actually if we go down this path, it doesn't help at all. So we change the perception. That's a part of the training. We need to do that. We need to train ourselves to do that. Take these things more seriously. So I've been covering most of the negative side of it. Now it's nearly it's nearly 9 now. It's 9 now. So, but I wanted to get to the topic now. Like the aspect of the gratitude now. So gratitude being the negative of all that. Instead of fault finding, we find something good in people, good in things. That's gratitude. And that's very rare thing to do in the world, because we are predispositioned in a way, not in like a destined or kind of a fate kind of a situation, in the Western philosophy sometimes, like they say Calvinism and all. It's not like that, but we are conditioned to sort of, somehow deal with these things negatively. But instead of that negativity, how about gratitude? Gratitude is such a wonderful quality. How do you develop that? You start to think good things they have done to you. You start with the easy cases first. Now, there are so many people actually who had been helpful for us. Actually, we are here because of them. We are who we are because of them. So it's always the case. If you see generations after generations, because of their help, we are here, and we also helping for the next generation. Yes, sometimes in terms of the samsara, sometimes in terms of ending of the samsara. Either way, first what we do actually improve ourselves in our situation in the samsara, and then eventually finding an exit, because that's the best thing to do. So, Katanyo Katavedi, the first quote I started the talk, Lord Buddha says, it's very rare to see Katanyo Katavedi people in this world. Katanyo means you remember all the help you received, the people, the good things people done to you. Katavedi also in a similar sense, and you try to, you having known that, you try to reciprocate it. Krutajñata, Katanyo Katavedi. It's a rare thing. So now here Lord Buddha not being cynical. Oh, alas, I dread, I fear there are not many people who are not Katanyo Katavedi. He's not saying that. He's saying that we need to practice that. We need to be one of those rare people. Get into that group, because the tendency is that we forget. We start to take things for granted because they are there all the time. Yeah. Sometimes we don't. We feel like telling a person actually thank you for doing. Thank you for being kind and all. But somehow we feel a little embarrassed. Well, what if they think that actually, I'm being a little too cheesy or something? But, you need to be a little brave as well for these things. And time to time, even as monks, actually, sometimes we struggle with these things. But we need to be brave, actually. And they know, actually, you're not being manipulative or something, but you really kind of meant what you said. So it's good to tell these things. And you immediately feel good about it. And it's not too late. Also, otherwise you know actually what they done to you, but you never told them, and they never heard from you. So it's good to tell, to the person. It'll always, you feel immediately good about it. So, gratitude, there are so many people actually have been helpful for us. Lord Buddha talks about the gratitude towards parents in one sutta. And if you remember, this sense of gratitude, this sense of recognition of how important the parents are, is part of the foundational right view. Part of the very important thing. So this sutta is in the Samyutta. Actually, is it in Samyutta? Okay. So this is in the Anguttara actually. So, yes. Anguttara, the Dukkha Nipata, the book of twos, two things. Mendicants, because I say that these two people cannot easily be repaid. What to? Mother and father. You would not have done enough to repay your mother and father, even if you were to carry your mother around on one shoulder and your father on the other. And if you live like this for 100 years, and if you were to bathe them, anoint them, bathe, massage them, bathe and rub them. And even if they were to defecate and urinate right there, very graphic simile. Even if you were to establish your mother and father as supreme monarchs of this great earth, abounding in the seven treasures, you would still not have done enough to repay them. Why is that? Parents are very helpful to their children. They raise them, nurture them, and show them the world. And Lobuddha says further, but you have done enough, more than enough, to repay them if you encourage, settle, and ground unfaithful parents in faith, unethical parents in ethical conduct, stingy parents in generosity, or ignorant parents in wisdom. So he's pointing out actually how important these two persons are in our lives, and it's not easy to repay. But on the other hand, if you do, the greatest of all helps you can do to a person in the samsara, which is you show them the Dhamma, you encourage them to practice. That's the best way of helping them. Express your gratitude, Lord Buddha says. So that's about the parents. And how about the teachers? Time to time, I'm sure you get a moment actually remember your teachers, back in school. Not as a school kid though, I guess, because you're too close to the situation, so we don't appreciate that much at the beginning. But the more you see the world, the more you see people, you start to see actually how wonderful they were actually, maybe not all of them, but at least certain teachers was very kind to us and being very sensible, being very practical, being a role model. So you get this surge of joy, a surge of gratitude, the emotion of gratitude comes up. That is something we should do time to time. That is definitely encouraged. And yes, so we see, we are fully capable of these emotions, but we need to encourage these things more often. So it's such a wonderful thing. It's not about that person at first. It's about you. Because you are the person actually, you are the one actually immediately get the benefit of it. This beautiful energy, just you feel like the fragrance emitting from your heart because of that gratitude is such a wonderful quality. And you're not being somehow not that sharp or kind of being gullible to emotions and things like that. Not according to Lord Buddha. Certain philosophies and people might tell that, but not according to the Dhamma. As I told, actually we do recognize all these things, but despite, we choose to be positive, to be in a kusala, and that you immediately reaps the benefit of it. And as monks, personally, I also try to cultivate gratitude towards our teachers. And there's one sutta actually Lord Buddha says, so he gives a simile. When a newlywed bride goes to in this case, back in India, goes to the man's house, the man's family, she would be very obedient. She would be obedient towards, very kind of kind and kind of very friendly towards their, her in-laws. And there are cases actually, but I'll just mention the suttas. I can't be that much of a politically correct here. I'm sorry. So let me kind of cut it through. Otherwise, it will be so many words. But the Lord Buddha says, okay, but eventually, what happens? She gets critical and tell the in-laws, tell them off. I mean, I'm sure it goes other way around also. People take things granted, so don't get offended. It wasn't about about the woman here. So, but he's making a point here. It's not about the woman. He says, yeah, at the beginning she was friendly and obedient and all these things, And monks, I tell you, it happens the same with you also. Just after the ordination, as a new monk, you're obedient and you're sort of very kind of you're heeding towards your teacher. But after a while, start to argue with them. What do you know? And I don't, I'm not buying into that kind of a thing. Anything like you tell to your teachers, which is true. I agree. So he's saying actually, this is going to happen to you, young monks, and he says, remember to, and he says the advice is that you try to remember to be that newlywed bride. So he says, discipline yourself as a wedded bride, he says. Sappurisa Vaduka, I guess. That's the sutta. That's what the sutta is. Anyway, so because of that, you hear these things as junior monks. It is such an embarrassment if you get into an argument with your teacher, because it's kind of a canonized. It's absolutely no. Sometimes you disagree. It's inevitable. Sometimes you will find something to disagree. Monks have disagreed with Lord Buddha too. But getting into an argument and kind of being ungrateful, as absolutely no. You're not getting anywhere. I'm telling you, not right now. As a monk. So, because that kind of it's not that you're being just kind of indefinitely being subjective to abuse, or you're kind of giving away your head, giving up your head, your faculty of kind of thinking to someone else, but you are just practicing the gratefulness you're fixing that variable. It's not going to be a variable. This is it. The line is drawn. You're not going to trespass it. That's a standard. That kind of a ethic actually gives you a certain stability. It's not just mindless kind of some Asian kind of a meekness. It's not that. It kind of gives you the solidarity. So we need to claim that. Don't be kind of a, be disgusted or you feel like you're coming across weak or anything. So you are not weak. You are stable as as it can get, because you choose not to trespass that. So being grateful means that you remember that. You remember. Same with your parents also. It's a difficult thing, I know, but it's good to sort of practice these things to at least to a certain extent, so you know what's the taste of it, and if you are convinced, you can go further down that path. So, as monks, how we practice gratitude, and on top of that, it's not just not trespassing those lines, but you go further than that. We think their qualities. Think of what they kind of given to us. You look around, and all the confusion and all this mess you see in the name of religion, in the name of Buddhism. Despite all that, actually, they have done something. So at least you have a tiniest idea, actually, just to kind of avoid all this trouble, not doing any stupid thing, and just kind of thrive as a monk, as a nun, or as a lay person, as a lay practitioner. It's such a wonderful gift they have given to you. Otherwise, you never know actually what you've been, what kind of a crowd you've been kind of find you. You find yourself. There are so many crazy things going on. They might call kind of this thing also a crazy thing, but that's I don't want to sort of get into that logic, but that kind of a thing. So gratitude. So if you think in terms of these things, actually this surge, this gratefulness coming up, and if you practice this thing before your meditation, or you don't feel like meditating, but you just kind of walking up and down, you think, all the good things they have done to you, your teachers, these people, the teachers you admire, and it gives a boost, it gives this surge of sattva, and that arouses the energy. Then you can get into your meditation. As to taking up the subha-nimitta, Lord Buddha says you sort of pick up a subha-nimitta if you are if you are lacking energy. So practicing gratitude, it's not for the sake of some other person, as I said. That person is also there in the picture, but it's you. It's about you. And then for the others. When I was in Thailand, I'm sorry, I couldn't help but finish this talk, so I'll kind of go on. When I was in Thailand, so not like you are in the country. While you are in the country, you take everything for granted, even as a monk sometimes. The tradition and all these things, all the wrong way of thinking, we are doing things in Sri Lanka. You can sort of write a book about it if you want. Believe me. And there are monks actually who wrote books about it too, actually, about the wrong things happening here. Well, it's there, not unfounded, I know. But you are away from the country, most of you, being in abroad, you should start to notice these things, start to appreciate, what you've seen, things you had back in your home country. Suddenly some kind of little nationalistic feelings are coming up. Anyways, I'm not talking about the nationalism or anything, but you feel grateful to certain things, and because you're immersed in this new culture, you see, of course, greatness in this culture, and you compare what you had, what you were coming from, with this current situation. What they are doing correct, better. What they are doing better than, what we've been doing. And sometimes, occasionally, actually, what we are doing better than what I see here. Things like that. It's inevitable. You compare. One of the things, it would occur to me again and again and again, that I mean, people see you, particularly Thais sometimes, Thai monks. They see you, okay. Immediately they think that you're an Indian because of the skin color. But they are a little wary of Indians, though. Because there's a bit of a negativity towards Indians for some reason. I don't want to get into that. There are kind of a funny stories, but I don't want to kind of get into that, which I heard. But I say I'm from Sri Lanka. They say, "Oh, Sri Lanka." They notice, "Oh, Sri Lanka." Kind of, the expression is suddenly kind of different, and some of them immediately bring up, "Oh, Pratripitok." They say Pratripitok means the Venerable Tipitaka. That's how they put it. Even when they say the Tipitaka, they call it Venerable Pratripitok. Tri means three, right? So there are so many Pali words in the Thai language. Pratripitok. So they immediately recognize it. Some of they are not that great in the history, but at least they remember that. Or sometimes every now and then they say, "Oh, Prabhupada Ajahn." Prabhupada Ajahn. That means Venerable Buddha Gosa Acharya. Because they know, actually, we are so opinionated about the commentaries and stuff. We're so kind of a quick to sort of dismiss, "Oh, that's commentary," But it is something to recognize, actually, because of all this literature, actually, a tradition survived. I can dedicate another talk, actually, how it kind of happened. Although I also, time to time, my teacher also, time to time, would disagree with the commentaries, but my teacher had a great respect for commentaries, and myself also, because if you read them, you see, the contribution, actually, although sometimes they weren't kind of accurate. So they also see that. So they say that. So this also inspired me, and I knew my history, and I was kind of contemplating. Oh my goodness! I mean, we haven't sent any rockets, or we haven't done any kind of coolest next technology or anything. We are not good at that. At least we were not good at that. But at least we protected the Tipitaka as a country, as a community, as monks. We need to be very proud of it. So when I start to think in that way, I had certain opinions about, Sri Lanka being a Buddhist country, and how un-Buddhist it can get sometimes, and all these things we can sort of list, all this lunacy. But when I think in that way, yeah, but that's depressing if I think that in that way. But when I think in this way, which is a fact too, it kind of gives me immediate kind of surge of energy, and gives me kind of a lot of gratitude towards not just my, the senior monks, the monks before us, back in the days, but all the lay people actually supported them. So the tradition somehow survived. And later on, the Thailand and the Burma also, it was kind of transmitted later. And they also helped later on when we were down. But somehow, this gift was given from India to us, and somehow we managed to protect it. So at the beginning, it was, there are these stories actually, how difficult it was. Now, nothing written down yet. This was like beginning of before the Common Era. Everything was kind of verbatim, orally transmitted. So the Bhanakas, they call, there's a Palika and Bhanaka. You remember everything? There were Tipitaka Bhanakas. Sometimes the whole Tipitaka was remembered. There were Dika Bhanaka, but the Dika Nikaya, Anguttara Bhanaka, Majjhima Bhanaka, Samyutta Bhanaka, sometimes the Vinaya. So there were like these lineages of monks who were, who dedicated their life to sort of keep the text alive. And when this Vattagamini Abbe, the Valagamba king, was around, at the beginning there was an invasion, he was overthrown, and then immediately this famine came. And we were definitely in a very bad situation. And some went to India, some went to the down south, and some monks actually stayed wherever they were. And there's this story, this particular thing that the river is Mawe actually, which is close to where we live. The Mawe was dry. It was, the couple of monks, they were leaning against this dry, sandy banks of Mawe, and if they were tired, and there's not much food to go around, but despite that tiredness, they were kind of lean against these banks because of the tiredness, and one would recite whatever the text they were, they've been kind of keeping it alive, and the other would learn. So one chant, the other would sort of recite it, just to kind of keep the text going on. And eventually, so that's how the commentaries say actually how difficult it was. But at the end of that period, the stability came back. The monks also came back from different areas, and they chanted together, and they found that that somehow the books were survived. And there was this one case actually. There was this Mahanidesa, a book called Mahanidesa, was only remembered by one monk by that time. So it came that close to sort of to be lost, because you see a certain canon was survived, not much in India. There's just fragments and stuff, but mostly survived in China. But other than this, occasional books survived in China, the whole set of the Pitakas actually survived here. It's because of we Sri Lankans made it happen. So you see, when you think about it, actually, it gives that boost of energy. Actually, we made it happen. So it gives enormous gratitude towards these people. So you can think in the same way towards these days also. The lay people, they're trying their best. They are not sometimes asking that much. Sometimes, people quickly get into this thinking that, they're just giving dana and they're not meditating and they are not that kind of a Buddhist. That's another like a judgment people pass. particularly monks. Yeah, I know. Sometimes it is the case. But at least, because these things, this we shouldn't forget that actually these things are voluntary things. We can't shout down these things, down the throat. Shout down the nibbana of their throats. Whenever they feel like doing it, they will do it. But meantime, they make sure that they offer food in the morning. So at least we can practice. Okay, Venerable Sir, right now I don't have much time to sort of attend, but please, at least you do. You go ahead and do it. Because of that generosity, that suffices to call this country Buddhist. Because most of the people actually want this to carry on, although they are not practicing 100% technically. It doesn't have to be like that to earn that title, a Buddhist country. So don't be so negative about it. People do all this sort of rubbish and all these sort of things, you see, but still, people like you, all kind of trying to sort of making this possible. So we should be proud about it. So that's also part of the gratitude, I would say. It's mostly on our part. I was just sharing, how we monks actually try to engage these things. So we have enormous gratitude towards that. Otherwise, it'll be very kind of a dull and negative. We immediately get into this spiral. Oh, we are preaching so much, but very little people actually practicing it. It's such a depressing thing to think. So that's not how we try to think. So I will stop here. So ultimately, this gratitude you can channel towards your meditation object as well, making it pleasant and all. So gratitude goes all the way, I would say. Ajahn Brahm, he recommends, he encourages us to practice in this way a lot. So I would like to share these thoughts with you. I'm sorry I'm way past my 1 hour talk today, but I wanted to cover the material I thought I should cover. I hope it was okay. So I would like to encourage you to practice more gratitude. Think about these things and be more grateful for what you already have. So thank you for listening, and may you realize Nibbana soon. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.